Hi, my name is Peter Moe and I'm from Tourism Ireland's Nordic office in Copenhagen. Today we will be talking about the Irish National Stud Garden, as well as Irish horse racing. We have the perfect person with us here today to enlighten us on this. David Wardell, Tourism Development Manager at the Irish National Stud Gardens. Now David, you're very welcome to our show today. Would you mind telling our listeners what a stud is?
Good morning, Peter. Lovely to be able to speak to you. What is a stud? Well, actually, it's a funny question because in America, a stud would be the physical horse who breeds, whereas in Europe, a stud is more classified as the place. So in America, in America, you would have a place called, let's say, Claiborne Farm, where studs live. Whereas in Europe, we have the Irish National Stud, which breeds top horses and has stallions. So we don't necessarily call them studs, we call them stallions. So, of course, this causes great hilarity when American visitors come here and they see signs like stud office or, the national stud, because they all think that's talking about the horses, when in fact, our stud office is our farm office.
Oh, fair enough. I didn't know that, but that's good to know. I mean, yeah. So basically, it's a place where horses are bred.
It's a place where the thoroughbred is
Thoroughbred
bred.
horse. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's horses for racing and.
Yes, a thoroughbred is extraordinary. It's a breed of animal which come back actually about 300 years, with three purebred Arab stallions were brought in by these posh English and Irishmen. So they were sort of nothing like a thoroughbred. They were more like a sort of a whippet-like horse, very beautiful, nimble, but not great, didn't have great stamina and strength. So these horses were bred with our common old war horses and hunting horses. And this what brought about the breed of a thoroughbred. But interestingly enough, they've been logged from day one. So virtually every racehorse in the entire world can go back to one of those three stallions.
Wow. And when was this? This was
right back at the end of the 1600s and the 1700s. The late 1600s, early 1700s. So it goes back that long. And that's why we're very careful when we breed horses. We have a lot of very, very strict rules as to, like, it might interest you to know, we're one of the only farming breeds in the world where there's a worldwide ban on artificial insemination for racehorses. Whereas other horses or cattle or anything, if it was a show jumper, for instance, they can store as much semen as they like, or if it's a female show jumper, she can donate her eggs to a surrogate. But in the racing world, every racehorse in the world are bred naturally. So the female ex-racehorse has to come to a stud farm like us and actually physically breed with a stallion.
And why is that? Sorry.
It's as I say, going back to those three Arab stallions. It's
just a tradition.
It's a small gene pool, and if you can imagine, we're going to talk maybe a bit later. We've had a top stallion here. He was one of the top stallions in Europe, and if you had a artificial insemination, he could foreseeably he could have bred 1,000 a week. Because that's how artificial works. You take semen, you split it up, and everything, and it's going to devalue all his stock. But more importantly, in a few years' time, you'd only have brothers marrying sisters. So he can only physically breed when he was really young, maybe up to 200 in the season, because it was a closed season too. It all happens in the spring. So basically, he can only do maybe maximum, when he's quite young, about 200 in that closed season. And then he has to finish. And it gives the opportunity for all the other stallions of his caliber to breed. And therefore, it
diversifies the gene pool as well.
It diversifies. Now, there is a way which interests people. We're slightly going, a long way around an answer. But we do breed all around the world by our young horses, actually, at the end of the season. So every thoroughbred in the world, in the Northern Hemisphere, I should say, has one official birthday. This is January the 1st. So if you had a foal born in December, he's worthless, or she is worthless. Because if he's born in December, he's won on January the 1st. Next year, he has to register as a 2-year-old racehorse. But he's only going to be a year and a month old, not nearly big enough. The following year, he's got to register for a 3-year-old. Well, he's only going to be half the size of all the other 3-year-olds. 4 year.
Sorry, why?
Well, it's a bit like in humans. You have the under 12s, the under 16s, the under
Yeah,
18. So, because it stops you going to the race course and say, sorry, you can't go into that 2-year-old race because you're not old enough. So everyone's classified from the January the 1st. And
yeah. Okay.
and that's very important. So all our foals are born in January, February, March, April, May. We still had 50 odd in May. We'll have nearly 400 born on the place this year. But come the end of
Wow.
May, we'll completely finish having foals until the following January. And but
Okay.
going back to the stallions and artificial insemination, so all our stallions, it's 11 months gestation. So they start. This always causes a laugh, Peter. They start. I'm not joking you, on Valentine's Day, and they truth, because if they started at the beginning of February, you'd have your
Mhm.
first babies born in they could pop out in December. So you never ever start earlier than Valentine's Day to make sure you have that January foal. And the stallions then finish at the end of June. But the younger stallion, he's sitting around for quite a long time, nothing to do. So I tell you what, some young stallions do. They physically get on aeroplanes and they fly down to places like Australia, New Zealand,
Mhm.
South Africa.
Mm.
Australia and New Zealand are the biggest market because they basically, their winters are summer. So their January the 1st, below the equator, it's called Southern Hemisphere breeding, is August the 1st. So our stallions can work down there and then they come back at Christmas and then they'll work here and then they'll go to Australia. And they usually only do this when they're very young, because when their first runners come out, everyone will step back and stop using them. And if they're really fast, they can put up their prices and travel to Australia. And if they're really slow, they won't want them on Australia. But we've basically made as much of our investment back before they have their first runners.
Fair enough. That's incredible.
It's a very long
But
answer for one very simple question. I apologize.
yeah, no, but it's incredibly funny still. So David, if artificial insemination is not allowed, then how do you know if a mare is ready for breeding?
Oh, that's a very good question. Basically, I mean, as I say, because it's 12 months, nature doesn't want to hang around for too long. So she'll actually come into season, or the egg inside her will start growing 9 days after foaling. So you could actually mate again 9 days later. But we'd usually wait her regular cycle. She will ovulate 21 days after she's
Hmm.
last ovulated. Now, in the wild, the stallion would be checking, and when she's in season, she's very happy to get married, and when she's not, she will kick and bite and squeal. Now, we have a small problem here because our stallions are a little bit precious and valuable. So in
Hmm.
each of the yards, we have a little gigolo, and he's called a teaser pony. He's a small stallion, but he's only a pony stallion, and his job
Okay.
is purely to chat the ladies up. So he has a window, and the ladies are led past the window every day, and they can kick underneath the window if they're not happy. So it's very black and white. The ladies are led past from about 14 days. They kick underneath the window. We grab their foal and they go out into the paddock for the day. And we do that day 14, 15, 16. Around day 17 or 18, she's
Hmm.
led past, and suddenly she goes, "How do you do, Mr. Teaser? Nice to meet you." And we know then that she's becoming receptacle to a stallion. We know now there is an egg starting to grow to her. It gets a little bit more technical then, because we don't want to be wasting our time. We want to make sure it's just near ovulation. So what we do then is that a vet would come in 7 days a week, and we would scan her eggs. And you can
Okay.
do that by going through the top passage. We don't want to go near the egg, it's a very sterile area. But if you go through the top passage, you can pull out a bit of poo and you can put a scanner in and you can see what the egg is doing. And if the egg isn't right, we'll tease the next day. Then we'll scan, tease, and eventually the vet will go, bingo, that egg is ready to ovulate, and therefore you can go up, and you usually only have to go up to the stallion once. So the poor old teaser pony has a rough job. He's chatting up all these ladies, and then a stallion actually takes over and gets married.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's fantastic to hear. I have to ask though, why does the Irish government have a national stud? Why is it government owned?
Well, it goes back actually pre-independence. There was a
Hmm.
very flamboyant Englishman founder who was very wanted to impress the hoi polloi. He had a bit of a chip on his shoulder because he was from beer. He made all his money from beer. He was called William Hall
Hmm.
Walker, and he wanted to really get in. He did several things to really show off to the aristocracy. He lent his favourite horse to the king, which happened to win the Derby, and that's the only time the kings of England have ever won the Derby. And to really finishing it all to get it, if you like, as a war gift for World War One, he presented the entire farm to the English pre-independence, and it was became the English national stud. So Ireland, funny enough, we had better things to be doing when we first became independent. So we didn't take it on till 1946 officially. But the Irish government, to answer your question, were very, very brave because they could have sold it off. It was maybe an English vanity project. But we are a huge, huge industry in this country. In 2023, there are over 30,000 people employed in our industry, and it's got huge foreign investment. So we have
Hmm.
Saudis, Kuwaitis. Funny enough, the Maktoum families, who basically rule Dubai, they have several farms bigger than this all over the countryside. And then the biggest in the world is actually an Irish consortium in Tipperary, who have nearly 1,000 employees and over 9,000 acres worldwide, including farms in Australia. So
So it's big business, is fair to say.
huge industry. Now, we weren't like that in 1946, but the Irish government were very brave. They restocked the farm and said, yes, this is the showing off, if you like, the flag bearer of this incredible business in this country.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But then, I mean, this all sounds very, I won't say industrial, but very corporate or somehow. But how do I then experience this as a consumer? What's the consumer experience when you go to the Irish National Stud?
Well, I think the fact that it is a business. We are a type
Mm.
of farming. We don't have racehorses here. We try and breed the very best looking athletes that can be sold on into the racing business. So it is a farm. So we're one of the very few places that the general public can actually come into a commercially working farm and see how it works. So we have
Ah, okay.
visitors that come in from all around the world. We have free independent travelers. We have coach groups. We have private people who just want to have a private guide. And then we even run a very back of the scenes, high end luxury tour as well. And they can come in and they literally get a tour, takes about an hour, and they can see exactly. We explain to them, we give them a little bit on that history, but we walk them around the farm and we explain the 5 key ways we make our money on the farm. Would you like me to explain those 5 key ways?
Sure, if you can summarize them, sure.
Summarize the 5 key ways is one, we have this maternity suite, like a maternity hospital in humans. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, people pay us to have their birthing done in a safe environment. So they come a few days before
Right.
and they leave a day or two afterwards. And we'll foal between 350 and 400 foals this year.
To foal means to birth a horse.
Yes, to birth a bird. Now, that is a gorgeous time of year, but very, very important to tell everyone that, like I've said, because of that January the 1st rule, we'll still have 50 born in May, but by the end of May, all the foals are stopped being born, but we still have a lot of mares and foals out on the farm. So
Hmm.
that's one of our incomes, a foaling fee and any bed and breakfast. Number two is some of them stay on the farm once they've had their foal, and we organize all their re-impregnation. So when they go home, they have a foal at foot and a foal inside them.
Okay, yeah, because the 11th month gestation.
Exactly, because it's 11 months, it happens very quickly. As I say, as soon as it's after Valentine's Day, you start again. So, and a mare will actually, because it's so, she
Mm.
will actually want to reproduce 9 days after foaling, and then every 21 days. So it's because it's a year. There's no hanging around. Then number three, we, the company that runs it for the government, we own about 50 females, and the 50 females then have 50 babies,
Mm.
and we sell them at the auctions, usually when they're about 18 months old, so the following September. So again. So there's lots of mares and
Yeah.
foals that we own living on the place all year round that people can come and see. We also have, gosh, at this time of year, anywhere between 50 and 100 boarders on the place. So these are people who own female horses, but they don't own land in this country. So we look after all their female stock. And then number 6 of our income,
Mm.
we have 8 stallions on the place. We don't own any of them outright, but they can have anywhere up to around about an average around 100 mares for each one. So that's busy, and that all happens. So they drive in and
Okay.
drive out. Remember, I said no AI, so they drive in and drive out. So it's a busy working farm, and people get to see it. But every time of year, for instance, if they come from sort of late August onwards, they won't see mares and foals because the foals will be weaned and they'll be in separate paddocks from their mothers.
And where is the stud then? Where can I find the stud if I want to visit?
The stud is brilliantly located because we're just south of Dublin, the capital. So we're under an hour drive on right off a motorway. So a lot of our visitors could be just weekend vacations to Dublin or short trips to Dublin. But then a lot of our visitors are people traveling because it's on the main route south. If you're going to Limerick, Cork, Kerry, even to Kilkenny, there's a slight detour. Anyone heading really passes our door. So we're a minute off the motorway and also next to the Kildare Village, which is a very famous retail park.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that, well, basically foaling starts between January and onwards.
Yeah, till the end of May.
To the end of May. What other seasons are there for the stud?
Well, basically, so what happens? The mare has her foal in the spring, and then once the weather gets nice, some mid sort of end of April from May onwards, they're all out on the paddocks 24/7. Up until then, they're all coming in and out every night. So it's always people like to see them being led in and out of their paddocks. But come the end of April, once the frost has stopped, they're out 24/7. And then last year's foals will be brought back in August and prepared for the yearlings, for the sales, for the auctions when they're about 18 months old. So really the spring is the main busy time on the farm. A few of the foals might be sold off in the autumn. But we've also got 2 gorgeous gardens here. Our founder, William Hall Walker's extravagance for showing off is in 1904, he went to an exhibition in London and he met a very famous Japanese gardener called Tessa Aida. And Tessa saw a bit of money walking in, I'd say, because he was commissioned to do 5 years and 40 laborers, and he built a very famous Japanese gardens. So we have the Japanese gardens here, and that's very seasonal as well. You have cherry blossom, you have the autumn, the fall, the spring. So that perhaps at the moment is full of snowdrops and little bulbs coming out. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, that sounds lovely. So it's not only then a stud; it's also an incredibly beautiful garden experience that you can.
There's only over 600 acres to walk around. So you could basically, you could see the Japanese garden is quite a small garden, but we have another garden that is built for the millennium, which was St. Fiacre's garden. And that's a much larger 8-acre garden with lakes, waterfalls, and amazing, beautiful reproductions of the beehive cells the monks lived in the 5th century. So that's a lovely, beautiful, full of wildlife, swans, and flora and fauna. So it's gorgeous. So it's not just, yes, you're right. It's not just a commercial stud farm. It's a whole experience. You could spend 3 or 4 hours. Something I haven't mentioned is what we built just before the COVID outbreak, which has just won a huge award in America. It's called the Irish Racehorse Experience. The Irish Racehorse Experience is a purpose-built interactive experience, because when you come to the farm here, you only experience the first 18 months of a horse life. But of course, it's got a whole racing career to go onwards. So we built this interactive experience where people get given a tablet, and on the way around, they can play the game of investing in the industry. So they go to a simulator of an auction, and on their tablet, the horse is walking around, and they buy that horse. that is walking around in front of them in the simulator.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the next room is a training room, and in that room they get to give it a name, and then as they go around, they get to buy a fictitious trainer, and then a regime, and then they also design colors that their jockey might want to wear, and then the crescendo, if you like, in the middle of the exhibition, we have a simulator of 8 horses with a screen of a race going on, and these horses move a little bit and they rock backwards and forwards, and you can see if all the decisions you've made make you win or lose the race. We have a simulation of a race, and it's just amazing.
Okay.
The fun you get out of it, but also it's very realistic. And as I say, it's just won a huge award, the Thea Award, based in California, and we're really excited about. And so that's also part of the ticket to come into the place.
And how much is the ticket to come into the place?
It varies. It's slightly in the off season to the season. Basically, it's very good value. I think it's roughly around €20 to a family ticket, which is between 40 and 50 euros.
Okay, so it's not expensive at all, and I mean comparatively, because especially considering then that you get to have the whole experience of being an investor in an Irish racehorse. I mean, how much does one of your horses retail for?
Well, we've had several stallions. Several. There's been since 1946. Has been over 80 come through the place. But without doubt, the most successful stallion, and he's still here. He's semi-retired now because he's a 26-year-old man, and that's old for a thoroughbred. Wow. But in his prime, he's a horse called Invincible Spirit, and in his prime, he was insured for around 60 million euros. He's now, of course, not insured for anything because you can't get life insurance as an old age pensioner. But when he was in his prime, he was getting 120,000 euros for each lady that visited him. But that's good value because the average price of his unbroken offspring, the auction, was around €500,000. So,
okay, so I mean, €50 or €500,000.
Now we have horses here. We have horses here that stand. You only have to pay 2,000-3,000 to use. We have, I think, we have a stallion which is you costs about 15,000 to use. One at about 10,000. We would be more of the medium range, and we're semi-state here. But there's always a dream there that one of our stallions, like Invincible, started from rather a lowly, start. His first initial fee was 10,000 euros, but only that he produced hundreds and hundreds of top-class winners. The price and the demand for him went up, and it's like the stock market. The more the demand from it, the higher the price. And he's actually got over 20 of his children are stallions all around the world. And when he was a baby, to pay the bills, he went up and down to Australia. If you go to Australia, the most successful stallion in Australia is his son called I Am Invincible.
That's fantastic. So how many horses are bred and sold at the stud then in total a year?
Well, oh gosh, in Ireland, Ireland is, as I say, per capita one of the most successful. But just on the farm alone, we would there would be, gosh, if you can imagine, with all the mares and foals coming in to have their foals and leaving again, all the mares coming in to driving in to use the stallions in or out, there are literally hundreds and hundreds coming through the farm, and we would sell well over 100 animals a year at the auctions, just our farm. But in Ireland as alone, it's $1 billion industry. It's huge. It's huge. Yeah. And a lot of it, as I say, is foreign investment, because we've got this amazing fertile land in Ireland. Everyone wants to breed their horses in this wonderful limestone land.
The Emerald Isle.
The Emerald Isle.
So, what's your favorite experience when working with horses?
Well, sadly, I don't work nearly as much because now I'm in charge of all the tourism side of the farm. But one of my, without doubt, I ran a birthing hospital like we've got here. We have, part of our, as I said, we have this foaling unit, and I ran one of those many, many, many years ago when I was soon after college. And you never get bored getting a knock on the door, being called down, no matter if it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you literally help this lady. You put your hand in, make sure everything's in the right position, and you make
Okay.
sure, and this creation lands on the straw, and within an hour and a half, that foal is up, sucking at the milk bar and ready to go out in a little paddock the next morning. It's so quick, but it's just you never
Wow.
lose the thrill. You could be woke 10 times in the night, and you'd never begrudge getting up to do that. It's just the most wonderful thing.
That does sound wonderful. And I mean, foals are lovely. I love seeing the videos that you share of the foals in the fields. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, well, we're full on at the moment. I think yesterday we had, I think 8 in 24 hours. So it really is hotting up to become a very, very busy season of foaling. But again, it's a lovely time of year. And our nursery paddocks, I brought a group around this morning, and there were at least 8 or 9 in nursery paddocks just skipping around their mothers, and it's just beautiful.
So spring is definitely the time of year if you want to experience the foals.
If you want to get them absolutely brand new, you've really got to come in the spring. But as I say, come the end of May, the last one is born. But June, July, and August, there's plenty to see. Actually, there's something else that I haven't mentioned. The final thing that we see, we also have 6 retired superstars on the.
Okay.
We call them our living legends. And especially if you know anything about racing in England and Ireland, because they were on television for 10 years. The difference between them and the Stallions is that they were all ran most of their careers as geldings. They were castrated, and that gives them longevity as a male. I mean, without getting into too much detail, if you have a female horse, she starts as a 2-year-old and she can race as long as you want, or you can stop and breed. However, if you have a male horse, he's got to prove to become a super stallion prematurity. So he's got to become really fast very quickly as a 2, 3, 4-year-old. Once he arrives at nearly 5, things are going to go different in his head. He's going to get muscles, though he never had muscles before, and he's becoming very difficult to train. Now, you can make him back to his super speed again by castrating him, and he becomes a gelding, and he can race for as long as you want. But obviously, at the end of his career, he can only retire. And these horses become more famous than a lot of the Stallions, because the Stallions, as I say, they did it all on the track as a 2, 3-year-old. They're covered in cotton wool. They're never seen on television again. Whereas the Geldings can be out on TV for another 10 years. And they do and a lot of them do jump racing, which is steeplechasing. They have a huge fan base and become very, very famous. So our living legends are one of the most popular things people want to come and see. And because they're geldings, now, unlike the Stallions are behind big fences, whereas the geldings can have their head over the fence and they get given carrots every day by the general public, and they just have a lovely, and everyone wants to have a photograph with one of our legends. Have all got wonderful names too. The most extraordinary name we have a horse called, well, basically the owners didn't know what they were going to call him, so they went to a wedding and they looked at a menu, and he's called Beef or Salmon. Anyone in racing knows about Beef or Salmon. He's now an old boy. He's about 26, 27, but Beefy is, and then we got another great man in there. He's called Faugheen, called after a village in Ireland, but all his fan base used to call him Faugheen the Machine, and he just superstar. There was another amazing horse that was in the Guinness Book of Records of the most successful horse of all time. He was called Hurricane Fly, who won 22 Grade 1s, jumping hurdles, not the big fences. He wasn't very big, and he jumped hurdles. And Hurricane Fly is retired out there. And then we have a big horse called Kicking King, who won the Cheltenham Gold Cup. It's like the Olympics of jump racing. And we have over 11 million euros in prize money just in that retired Geldings paddock. It's a wonderful place.
Wow, I mean, that sounds fantastic. One thing I can't get out of my head is just not visualization, but the audio thought of someone shouting, beef or salmon, beef or salmon.
Beef or salmon coming up on the outside and I know it causes a lot of people smile, especially our American visitors. And he was a funny horse. He certain tracks he didn't like to win on, and certain tracks he wasn't a dead cert every time, so he caused a lot of heartache, if you like, because he had all the ability, but he's a lovely, beautiful character, and
he was a true star.
He's a true star. Well, as I say, he's one of our living legends, and during the summertime they're out there, and as I say, they nearly go orange, the amount of carrots that they're given by all the people. So just to summarize, you have mares and foals in the spring and early summer. You have the stallions are out there the whole time. And then you have, running right the way through the year, a paddock of these wonderful geldings, the living legends.
Yeah, and then you have the experience center where you can try and become an investment guru in...
The experience is another whole thing. As I say, it's part of a free independent travelers entry fee, and that's another 50 minutes to an hour. And then, of course, the 2 gardens, and then
exactly.
And then, of course, we upgraded last year. We have the most spectacular shop and restaurant with homemade food. But the shop is great because a lot of our visitors think it's hilarious to go home with a T-shirt that says National Stud on it. They like that.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, I get that. So where and how can our listeners get in contact to find out more about what you have on offer then? Where can they get that stud T-shirt?
The best, of course, is our website, which is irishnationalstud.ie. And if anyone wants to think about groups or anything, you can get us at reservations at irishnationalstud.ie. But they're the best, and tickets can be bought through the website as well.
Perfect, David. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with you, and honestly, I've just been laughing so much at all the horse facts. I'm so happy. If the listeners could see me right now, I have a giant smile on my face. And I've just been trying to keep my laugh away.
I hope I haven't gone into too much detail. I really don't. But,
absolutely brilliant, David.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Not at all.